see Yamini Ramesh. She is now in Dubai.
Sree Shankara Guruvaram Sree Shankara Guruvaram Chintayami Bhavataranam Sree Shankara Guruvaram Chintayami Bhavataranam Shankara Guruvaram Chintayami Bhavataranam Shri Shankara Guruvaram Sa Shankarati Patibana Sa Shankarati Bana Sa Shankarati Bana Sa Shankarati Bana Jala Tula Kalanalam Sa Shankarati Bana Jala Tula Kalanalam Shri Shankara Guru Varam Chintaya Ajnana Timiratarani Ajnana Timiratarani Ajnana Timiratarani Angikrita Shruti Sarani Ajnana Timiratarani Angikrita Shruti Sarani Sugyana Sukhakarani Sugyana Sukhakarani Sukshma Pranavarani Sugyana Sukhakarani Sukshma Pranavarani Shri Shankara Guruvaram Chintayami Bhavataranam Shankara Guruvaram Chintayami
Thank you, Mrs. Ramesh. Very nice.
Thank you.
In spite of us saying abroad, you have found time to be in this one. We are very thankful to you. Now, introductory. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all for this 59th monthly lecture. This is our 59th monthly, almost 5 years. The topic today is, as you know, Advaita and Visistadvaita. Are they complementary or contradictory? When Vedic religion was in the threshold of annihilation due to growing influence of Buddhism and Jainism, there came our Sankaracharya, who founded, the period was 788 to 820, I think, and he founded this Advaita as a
system of philosophy.
hello, as a savior of Vedic religion. And today we have Vedic religion in India because of his efforts only. And he has played a pivotal role in reviving Vedic tradition and unifying Hinduism. You know that Ramanuja's period was 200 years later, that is 1017 to 1137 AD. He established Visistadvaita. Both Advaita and Visistadvaita are Advaita only. Both believe in monoism, non-dualism rather, while Advaita is pure non-dualism. Visistadvaita is qualified non-dualism. As the ex-president of India, Dr. K. Radhakrishnan says, both Advaita and Visistadvaita are not rival creeds, but complementary to each other. Both are considered as orthodox. Even Sankaracharya, who projected Nirguna Niravayava Brahman, has composed many devotional songs. So he stands on two Brahman theory, one Nirguna Brahman and the other Vyavaharika Brahman. Nirguna Brahman for realization. Yes, madam, it has come. Speaker madam is come. Then Ramanuja is known for his bhakti, and Sankaracharya has written a lot of bhakti literature. So there are a lot of similarities which our madam will explore after me, after my lecture. She is a PhD from my department only. Both of us belong to Madras University. She did her MPhil and doctorate degree both in philosophy department. Of course, a very senior member. I can take pride in calling myself. We both belong to same department. That's all. She has published many books. As the forthcoming volume, Indian and Western Epistemologies, a comparative study of knowledge analysis, is awaiting publication. She has attended innumerable seminars, and her CV itself goes to 40 pages. So much she has activities, and she has found this time to be with our best. Is a in our midst. Is a very this one. We are very happy, and I request madam to deliver the much expected speech. Thank you.
Thank you for your kind words.
Madam, when you go to the screen, it says enter full screen. You can just click that, it will go full screen. If you go to that, you have gone twice or thrice there to that corner, left corner. Above that in your screen, there, that green thing you click, the next one, it appears enter full screen there. Now it is full screen. You can go ahead.
Okay, now can you see me, but?
We can see you. I'll try to pin you here. I'll pin you, don't worry. Yeah, we can see. Oh, okay. I have to remove pin because it appears as 1 sec. I'll remove pin because I think you have to remove pin. Yeah, I have removed pin, but your screen has taken that. Switch to sharing content. Yeah, now yes.
Now yes, but you can see me, but I can't see the screen.
Oh, is that?
Can
you close that Zoom thing and try?
Shall I minimize? How about that? Now you can't see me, right?
Yeah. We can see you and the screen also.
No, we can. Yeah, we can see you, madam. When you are speaking, your screen will.
All right. So that's best. So thank you very much, and sorry for that initial hassles. We have quite a lot to do this evening. Please do let me know when I bore you. As Dr. Parthasarathi, my good friend, has announced, the title that we have chosen as Advaita and Visistadvaita, are they complementary or contradictory? Let's go to the text. Friends, the debate that ran between Advaita and Visistadvaita for over 10 centuries should be seen as an important chapter of global philosophy. During this period, the philosophical corridors of Dakshinavarta was busy with crisscrossing debate moves, loud roars of lions issuing commands, crying a foul at others, also with equally strong rejoinders from the opposite side, all aimed at raising edifices of these two schools to further heights. Very often the arguments turned subtle and minute, since the avenues for departure of views were limited, and the whole debate appeared as if it's a private game where the participants were the only viewers. How do we evaluate these two grand narratives, Advaita and Visistadvaita? The layman always felt that the latter tried to replace the former. Visistadvaita came as a corrective, as it were. The latter has emerged countering the major presuppositions of the former, defying the very thesis of non-dualism as proposed by Acharya Shankara. Nevertheless, the two debate traditions continued, not missing out any opportunity to subdue the other with attacks, rejoinders, counterattacks, and further rejoinders. Some view that they are incommensurable. It's an eyewash that they are pitched against each other, since actually they are not pitched against each other. Since they ask different questions, the answers ought to be different. That's why we say that it is incommensurable. However, a good number of scholars also subscribe to the view that these two interpretations of Vedanta are complementary, where one misses out, the other scores. Together, they give a complete theory for men to theoretically conceive the real and practically realize it in one's life. Note that they have been coexisting for centuries, as if each owns its private space where the other doesn't encroach. The very fact that they were running as two parallel streams, nourishing the land philosophically, is itself proof for the claim that the latter bond, namely Vishishtadvaita, was not to eradicate the former, not as a counter thesis to the former, but an improvisation of the former, filling the gaps, as it were, to make it a perfect system. In what follows, I shall try to substantiate this position and to establish it, and for this, I shall pick up seven major philosophical issues: vice the nature of the absolute reality, the nature of the self, the ontological status of the world, analysis of knowledge, the theory of consciousness, the concept of liberation, and the means for liberation, to show how Vishishtadvaita brings in this improvisation. Friends, how can we say that Ramanuja attempted an improvisation of Advaita? For his mission was to amalgamate Sri Vaishnavism with the Vedantic tradition, isn't it? By subscribing to Ubhaya Vedanta, did Ramanuja undermine the Vedic tradition? I don't think so, not the least. All successful efforts to enliven a tradition require changing it so as to make it relevant for the current context. To embrace a tradition is to make it one's own by creatively reinterpreting it. This is exactly what Ramanuja has accomplished. By amalgamating Vedanta with Sri Vaishnavism, Ramanuja enlarged the horizon of Vedanta. Fusion of horizon is not a war, as Francis Clooney would say. It happens beyond our willing. This amalgamation caused the emergence of a new horizon. Now, with this prelude, let me get to my task. First, the nature of the absolute reality. It would be interesting to examine to what extent Vishishtadvaita moved away from the basic ontological positions of the Advaita, significantly deviating from the Advaita concept of the absolute reality, as you all know, which is impersonal, attributeless entity, which has Satchit and Ananda as its Swarupa Lakshana. Ramanuja has drawn the supreme reality as a personal God with countless auspicious attributes. And this absolute is a qualified whole, of which Ishvara is the soul and the Jiva and the Jagat form the body. The latter two being tied up in an inseparable relation called Abradhak Divisheshana with the whole, a non-dual whole indeed, but with internal dissensions with it as modes or prakaras of it. The non-duality Ramanuja spoke of is thus Vishishta, qualified by the attribute elements of Chit and the Achit. Of the two attributes of God, the unconscious matter known as the Jada Prakriti is not really the other, a non-self with no positive attribute of its own. On the contrary, it's a part of God, the Shesha of God, which can become dynamic by the will of God. And this dynamism gets expressed in the altering process of Srishti and Pralaya, which in fact is a play of Ishvara, technically named as Brahma Varnama, an evolution. And actually, this is a real evolution. It is not an apparent appearance, as Shankara would say, but it is a real evolution, an evolution distinct from one spoken of in Sankhya, where it is Prakriti Parinamavada. This evolution also serves the purpose of the jivas to overcome the load of karma that arises due to the ajnana. Note that while the Advaitic absolute reality stands as an alien other, inconceivable and unapproachable, we do not know what this absolute Brahman is. Particularly for the empirical self, in Visistadvaita, the personal God is not an alien other, but a loving God who has everything that you experience in the world, but in abundance. See, you know what is kindness, but God has kindness in abundance. And you know what is beauty, but God has beauty in abundance. Now, this is something easily conceivable. In fact, this is the typical way in which all theological systems define God across the globe. He is not an alien other, but the very soul of the integral reality to which the individual self and the unconscious world constitute the body. This togetherness with God brings hope and solace to the aspiring individual. This is how he gives an improvisation. The non duality of the absolute is retained with internal dissensions. Due to the organic integral nature of the absolute, every term and thing ultimately connotes Brahman, since he is Antaryamin. Ramanuja's absolute is not God and the finite beings, but God in the finite beings as their sustaining ground. Brahman and the world should be really Brahman in the world. They are not two but one. This way, Ramanuja's infinite pervades the finite and removes its exclusive feeling of individualism and isolation. Let's move to the nature of the self, the second category. Ramanuja commences his inquiry on the self, namely, who am I, from a concern that arises from a mundane platform. Who is an individual? Now, though there is literally nothing, neither the body nor the mind, that remains static throughout our life. It is not my same body which I had when I was a child that I own now at the age of 60, nor the mind. There is nothing that is persisting. Nevertheless, there is an enduring self that has been retained by the individual, something that continues across time from childhood to old age. What is this enduring I? Is this a body? No, definitely it can't be, for body undergoes change and change considerably over time. Now, interestingly, a quick note on Ramanuja's definition of body, since body plays a significant role in his theory. Because remember that Chit and Achit forms the body of God. So it's very important for him how he defines a body. He attempts various definitions and rejecting all that, I don't have time. Finally, Ramanuja comes up with a viable definition of body as that which can be controlled and sustained by a Chaitanya for its own sake and whose nature is to subserve the soul. This dependence in terms of adhyatva and niyamatva is further explored. Again, due to lack of time, I delimit representing all this. If body cannot be the self, neither the external senses can be, because senses give different informations and they are gathered and we experience it as a single experience. Nor mind, because mind is an agent for the self. Nor the buddhi, because very often we say that we were not aware. But it is the chit or the consciousness to which we refer as the I. Now, this chit is categorically different from the Jada objects. For while the Jada objects depend on the self for being illuminated, the self, quite like light, illuminates itself as well as the rest of the things. Now, regarding the structure of the soul, he disagrees with Shankara, who holds that the soul is vibhu, all pervading. For Ramanuja, the soul is a monadic entity and its seat is in Hridaya of every jiva. Since the soul is the subtlest, it is also indestructible, imperceptible, inconceivable, indivisible, and changeless. The self, unlike the Jata Prakriti, is Ananda Rupa, of the nature of the bliss. And what is this nature of Ananda Rupa? What do we mean by Ananda Rupa? He equates it with Sukha, wellness, a state of being that does not depend upon any further desire. When you do not have any further desire, you are contented. That is the nature of Sukha, which is the status of Ananda Rupa. Now, release from the bondage is attained only with the fall of the present physical body. As you all know, they don't subscribe to the Jivan Mukti. After which the released Jiva is clothed in a body of Shuddha Sattva with which it is able to commune with God and experience its overpoweringly august but loving presence through eternity. To substantiate his thesis that the self continues to retain its identity even after mukti, Ramanuja seeks the help of Bhagavad Gita, wherein he says, Ascharyavat Pashyati Kastidenam, Ascharyavat Vadati Tadhaiva Chani, and so on. The Jiva, being an effective Brahman, exists in Brahman eternally as an individual being and functions as a mode or prakara of Brahman. See how Vishishtadvaita brings in a qualitative difference on the notion of the liberated souls, quite distinct from the Advaita. Here, moksha is not merely freedom from bondage, but is also a positive state of existence of the jiva in a supramundane realm, Paramapada, without losing its individuality. Deshika describes it as Paripurna Brahmanubhava. On the strength of the Mundaka text, Parama Samyam Upaiti, this is Shruti, it is claimed. Following this, Ramanuja says that the Jiva in the state of Mukti enjoys similarity with the Absolute. It is not Tadatmya as the Advaitins would say, but it is Sadharmya with it. At this stage, the Jiva reigns as supreme. Sa Swaraj Bhavadi. So Swaraj Bhavadi. But this equality is confined to the enjoyment of bliss. Bhogamatra Samya. It is confined only to the bhoga. It does not have the function of creation and dissolution, the functions of the Ishvara. Also, despite being Swaraj, there is the Dasatva even in the stage of Mukti. But it is subordinate to Ishvara, of course, but this subordination is one, it is not a burden for us. This subordination is one that does not cause any suffering, for it is the very nature of the Jiva, says Deshika. Deshika is with the view that at the stage of release, the soul is free to assume a body out of Sankalpa or remain without it. The choice is for the released soul. But this body is not a karmic body and hence does not cause suffering nor bondage, further bondage. Now let's move on to the third problem, the problem of consciousness, which is too closely linked with the problem of jiva. Now, how does this self gets related to consciousness? For Ramanuja, very interesting. Atman is and has consciousness. That means consciousness assumes two forms in the individual. It's both substantive awareness as well as attributive awareness. Now, the two can be logically distinguished but cannot be divided substantially. The attributive consciousness called Dharma Bhuta Jnana, there is Dharmic Jnana as well as the Dharma Bhuta Jnana, speaks about the intentionality of consciousness, where consciousness belongs to a subject and points to an object. Nobody says, I am consciousness. Everybody says, I am conscious or I have consciousness, suggesting that consciousness is an attribute. That is one form of consciousness. Awareness of the functional consciousness or thought can neither disassociate with the self nor could identify itself with it and get merged with it. Hence, the unique position of Vishishtadvaita, which conceives consciousness as both substance and attribute. Now, Advaitins challenge this position. They say that Vishishtadvaitins seem to confuse two distinct ontological categories, the substance and the attributes, Dravya and the Guna. They argue that a thing cannot at the same time be a substance as well as an attribute. But Ramanuja says, of course it can. Light is an attribute for the lamp and a substance in relation to the rays. Chit is a substance because it possesses the qualities of contraction and expansion, and it is also an attribute because it belongs to Jiva. It's an attribute of the Jiva or Ishvara. Let's move on to the fourth one, the ontological status of the external world. Here also, remember, Vishishtadvaita subscribes to a realistic ontology. Coming to, and therefore he extensively speaks about the nature of the external world. Coming to the Achit category, Vishishtadvaita adopts a realistic view of the external world. External objects have an independent existence. Their existential status by no way is affected by being known. The object doesn't need a cognizer for its existence. Of course, the Jata Prakriti too functions as a mode of Brahman. Prior to creation, the material elements exist in the absolute in subtle condition, and during creation they assume qualities that did not exist prior. The unconscious matter known as the Jada Prakriti becomes dynamic by the will of God. And here again he redefines Maya as the power of Brahman, and its effects are absolutely real, though changing. See, it's a realistic ontology. In other words, the external objects form the kshetra, and they do not depend on the self or the kshetrajna for their existence. However, this view that the knower and the known are externally connected it's going to make things difficult for the Vishishtadvaita. Because, as you all know, if the subject is shut up in itself and the object exists out there with no connection with the subject, the two cannot come together. To escape this difficulty, along with their epistemological realism and the theory of external relations, they also propose what is called the Avruddhaksa Visheshana, which I have already referred to you, the inseparable relation, the integral unity of the Chit and the Achit in the absolute God. For example, the relation between the hand and the pen is external, while that between the hand and the fingers is internal and organic. While externality underscores, this is where the body analogy, the Shesha Sheshi Sambandha becomes significant. While externality underscores the difference of Chit and Achit, they're externally related. In relation to the whole, they become inseparable and correlative factors and lose their independence and exclusiveness. The phenomenal world, in brief, is not a collection of subjects and objects, but is a creation of subject-object duality. This is the phenomenology that Vishishtadvaita proposes. The interchanging position of the self as both the knower and the known, Jnada Jnaya, is what distinguishes it from Advaita, which says that self is purely a knower. They rightly point out that the intersubjective discourse would be impossible if the self has been denied the status of being both subject and object. Remember, they subscribe to a realistic epistemology and ontology. Discarding both the idealistic and the realistic positions of Advaita and Nyaya, respectively, Advaita idealism and Nyaya realism, Vishishada subscribes to a purely phenomenological position, where knowing is neither a travel from the particulars of senses to a pervading identity, as Advaitans would like to view. See how Advaitans speak of knowledge? They say that it is from particulars you move on to the general, to a pervading identity, and nor a descent in the understanding from the universal to concrete objects, as Nayayikas would hold. For the Nayayikas, it is a descent from the universal to the particular, because for them, since they are combined with the Vaisheshikas, the Vishesha or the particular is significant for them. So it's a travel from the general to the particular. Now, Vishishadvaita discards both these extremes and but a project, they understand knowledge as a project where both the subject and the object crisscross in the same lived world, where its status as the knower and the known becomes relative to the position it holds. This takes us to the crucial position of Vishtadvaita. The world of physical objects is for consciousness and not in consciousness. The objects are for consciousness, typical phenomenological position, and not in consciousness. All objects, artha as they are called, are real. Shankara is wrong in saying that whatever becomes an object is false, because he famously makes a distinction between atma and anatma bheda. So the anatma is false per se. Quite the contrary, only the real is given in knowledge, according to Ramanuja. Even in error or illusion or dream, it is the real which is presented to consciousness. There are elements of reality even in all this. His Sadhyadi or Yadhathakyadi claims that in knowledge, it is the real and the existent which is cognized. To substantiate this position, he seeks the aid of Panchikarana, which permits him to presume that even in a shell, there is elements of silver, and it is, though minimally, and it is this elements of of silver that gives us the awareness of silver in a shell. In brief, yet it is partial knowledge. Our branding of experience is Satya and Aniruddha. truth and false as binaries is merely a practical approach unsupported by ontology. The vision is that error does not serve the practical interests of life. However, I don't have time. Probably during the discussion, I'll tell you how the validity of knowledge is moving towards pravritti samarthya. However, if a perceptual experience does not serve its end and fails to satisfy the needs demanded of it, as in the case of a mirage water, vyavahara anuguna, knowledge has to be vyavahara anuguna. If it is not, then it can be discarded as false. In brief, truth is selective and serviceable, and as it promotes the end of life, it gains pragmatic value. Truth is thus what works, but whatever works is not true. Truth as a value is prior and has precedence over workability. The thesis of Sadvidya is a corollary to Sadhyadi, which pronounces that by knowing the one Brahman, the ground of the universe also is known. Ega Vijnanena Sarva Vijnanani. This is the Sadvidya theory. Vishishtadvaita thus does not make a binary between the finite and the infinite knowledge as Advaitans would do, nor between the changing world and the changeless absolute as mutually exclusive. Here it seems to score better than Advaita, for it could retain the unique traits of Chit or consciousness that distinguishes it from the Achit, which is dull, but at the same time, this is significant, but at the same time, it refrains from subscribing to the standard binary between the self and the non self, the Atma and Atma Veda, demeaning the latter as a mere nothing, as something which has the Anatma, as something which has only a negative role to play in man's spiritual ascent. Moving on to the fifth analysis of knowledge, which is very, very significant in Vishishtadvaita, which scores high when compared to Advaita. Vishishtadvaita then points out that jnana cannot be identical with the self, which we have already mentioned. For then, epistemology would be identical with ontology. The other alternative, that knowing is entirely unrelated to being, is also equally inadmissible, as it would land us in skepticism. For then, thought can never grasp reality. It will be two different things, as we have already said. He calls it as, he names, very, very curious ontological status. He says knowledge is something called ajada. Hmm? It is not jada, but it is not chetana either. So it is ajada or immaterial and distinguishes it from both jada vastu and chetana, souls and material objects. It's unlike material substances since it can, unaided, manifest itself as well as other objects. Knowledge manifests itself as well as the other object. It is unlike self-conscious soul since it is not self-conscious and cannot know itself, but it cannot know itself. Knowing is merely a revelatory function, as what the light does. It can reveal both itself, Swayam Prakashaka, and its Ardha Prakashaka. It reveals the object as well, but it cannot know either itself or its object. Just as a lamp can show itself as well as a pot, but it cannot know either itself or its object. The self can know itself as well as its object, but it can show only itself and cannot show its object. Ramanuja distinguishes between self luminosity and self awareness. These are two different things, he says. Knowledge is self luminous, but it is not self conscious. The self is both self luminous and self conscious, but it is not other luminous. In Jagrat, the presence of objects is essential for the function of knowledge. But in dreams, we have knowledge, and he has a unique theory wherein he says that God provides us factors in dream so that the soul can reap the fruits of its karmas. In deep sleep, also the self remains self-conscious together with the unmanifested dharma bhuta jnana, for there are no objects then to be revealed by knowledge. Since there are no knowledge, there is this dharma bhuta jnana, but unmanifested form. While the finite self is monadic and infinitesimal in nature, its consciousness is vibhu. Now, Vishishtadvaita affirms the knowability of reality and says that we can know things, ardha, as they are. For Ramanuja's realism is very strong, and this is one of the reasons why Vishishtadvaita is more popular among the Western scholars than Advaita. I will probably, when I was talking with Parimal Patilji of Harvard University, he was saying that, well, Vishishtadvaita is chewable, but Shankara seems to be doing something very different. Anyway, so these are the comments that are made by our Western counterparts. For Ramanuja, neither the object is a vritti, a psychosis, nor the subject a counterfeit self, as Advaitin claim. Both the subject and the object are interdependent reals essential to knowledge. That consciousness is necessarily intentional, a theory maintained by the phenomenologist, thus has its resonance in Visistadvaita ontology. But remember that it also has the substantive status. Every judgment is the affirmation of reality, and this is very, very, very beautiful. He says, see, there is no two type of knowledge as in the case of Advaitins, where you have the Antakarana Vritti, which deals with the ordinary epistemology, and there is the other knowledge which is avagadi, attainment. No two type of knowledge. According to Ramanuja, every judgment is the affirmation of reality. Adding the Visheshanas is an exercise of augmentation of the self. Judgment as an act of predication symbolizes the unity of experience. In every judgment, the subject and the predicate are integrally united. They are not isolated bits or opposites, as the contemporary analysts would say. If we go to strike an identity between consciousness and the world, the judging process would be tautological and in turn useless. Reality is therefore savishesha or determinate and not the vishesha or indeterminate, as Advaitins would say. Let's now move on to the significant discoveries, or rather discoveries or the theories of the Visistadvaita. Regarding the concept of liberation, Deshika raises four primary questions with regard to mukti. Is there scope for the soul to escape from the so-called bondage? Second, if there be, whether all are eligible for moksha? Third, what could be the viable means to achieve it? And fourth, does the individual gets annihilated or retains its individuality in the state of moksha? The first question arises in the context where it has been popularly argued that karma, unless it is experienced in full, it will not leave its clutches on the individual. Na bhuktam kshiyate karma kalpakoti shatairapi. Unless you eat it up, you conceive it, you use it, then it will not get burnt. The question therefore is, can the jiva ever escape from this bondage at all? Now, Deshika gives a positive note on this. He argues that as a result of, and this is where the uniqueness of Visistadvaita, he argues that as a result of the meritorious deeds performed in earlier births, the individual comes in contact with men of spiritual wisdom, satsanga. This, coupled with the grace of Ishvara comes in, converts him as a mumukshu, and thereupon he takes up Brahmopasana. Importantly, this upasana enables him to get rid of the past karma as well as the future karma. Note that in the sadhana chatushtaya of the Advaitins, the aspirant is all alone, swimming across the currents. Remember, the Vairagya and all the Shamadamadi, all these prescriptions go against your natural tendencies, vasana. So you'll have to swim across the current, and there you are all alone. But here, the grace of God is a strong rope. It is as if, you're holding on to a strong rope, which will help you for an easy swim. To take up the second question, whether all souls are eligible for moksha, it is popular that Visistadvaita classify jivas as baddhas, muktas, and nityas, as you all know. There is an existing debate on the concept of nitya samsara. Is it fair to keep some as nitya samsaran? By way of defense, one group maintains that if all souls are eligible, then there is no scope for creation, because kalpantaka, every kalpa you will have to have creation. The opponents, however, argue that the possibility of nitya samsarana would only raise suspicion in the mind of an aspirant, whether he belongs to that category, and he might lose interest at all in his aspirations for moksha. Now, Deshika has a distinct solution for this. He says, even as we hold that, of course, he subscribes to the school's assertion that there are baddhas, but he holds that all are eligible, that we should say that all are eligible for moksha. The emphasis should be on the aspirant's desire to attain moksha and his willingness to undergo the prescribed sadhana sadhana to achieve it. That is the place where you have to place your emphasis. According to Deshika, Jivan Mukti is a self-contradiction. An individual who connected with prana, indriya, all the external apparatus, along with the physical body, is in the state of jivana. And this is what is called the embodied. And the one who is embodied cannot be a mukta or disembodied. Now we are moving towards the last portion, that is the means for liberation. In the Tattva Kalapa, Deshika unambiguously declares Shruti Shata Vihita Muktehe Upaya Bhakti. It is well known that in Visistadvaita Bhakti is not a sheer emotional disposition, but that has been made very, very clear by Sri Ramanuja in Sri Bhashya, but one that has been elevated to the level of true knowledge, as well as in the Gita Bhashya. It is conceived as an unceasing meditation done with love on the Supreme Being. Snehabhurvam Anudhyanam Bhaktiriti cha upayo visheshyate. It is Mahaniya Vishaye Preetihi. By defining it as Preeti Rupa Jnana, the school evolves out a fine combination of the three different faculties of human being in this method: the feeling, willing, and the knowing. Shruti texts like Tameva Viditva Adimrityum Eti Na Anya Bandha Vidyadeyanaya in Shvetashvatara, which has been successfully used by the Advaitins to establish that knowledge is a single means to liberation. Now, Visistadvaitins, in fact, do not contest this claim of the Advaitins. The question they raise is different. What kind of knowledge that you are speaking about that is besieged here? It cannot be sheer Vakyardha Jnana of Mahavakyas, as the Advaitins would claim. Further, if jnana alone is considered as the sole means to moksha, then what about the Shruti text referring to upasana? That would become meaningless, won't it be? What the texts intend to convey is that Shruti, what they intend to convey is that jnana evolved out into the form of steadfast meditation or bhakti, upasana, alone constitutes the direct means to moksha. Following the footsteps of Gita Kara, Deshika maintains that Bhakti Yoga should be preceded by Karma and Jnana. The former emphasizes the disinterested, that is the Karma Yoga, the disinterested performance of action like Yajna, Dana, Tapas, Ityadi, while Jnana signifies constant meditation of Atman with the control of mind and senses. Now, the Bhakti is that's been qualified by these two. The two are interrelated and together it helps the agent for Atma Avalokana. Deshika cites three positions of Advaita. He examines three Advaitans' positions and consistently refute all the three. First, he takes up the ancient school of Advaita, which says Dhyana Niyoga Vada, which is called Dhyana Niyoga Vada, which points out that Niyoga generated by Nididhyasanas and joined in the Upanishads is the means to moksha. Now he says this cannot be for Vakyardha Jnana is mediate knowledge, while cosmic illusion being immediate, its removal also should be immediate. The second school, who are supposed to be the followers of the Mimamsakas, hold that Brahman appears as universe due to cosmic illusion and moksha is the realization of Brahman as Nishprapancha. Countering this, Deshika says, moksha consists in realizing Brahman as Nishprapancha does not have any textual back. Nowhere in the Shruti you have such a vidhi, and therefore this cannot be accepted. The third school is that of Shankara himself, who maintained that jnana generated by Shravana, Manana, and Dhyasana alone is the means to moksha. Now, it's common knowledge that Shravana Janya Jnana Matrad, one cannot have moksha, for it counters our experience. And the Manana and the Nididhyasana is something which has been subscribed by Visistadvaitins as well. Further, he argues that if Shabda could generate immediate knowledge by just listening to the Mahavakya, if you can have liberation, then the distinction between Pratyaksha and Paroksha would stand null and void. Now, the claim is that the subsequent knowledge that arises out of meditation upon, which alone causes the removal of the bondage. Also, the Advaitic alternative of Mukti as Ananda Swarupa is compared to a stone-like existence. What happens to a Jivan Mukta or a Vidya Mukta? According to Advaita, it's a stone-like existence, says Visistadvaita, and looks colorless and hence less attractive. Realization of the nature of God and practice culminate in an ever more intense focus on God. This is what they propose. Realization of the nature of God. You should first of all understand, know the nature of God, and strictly follow. And this practice culminate in an ever more intense focus on God. While advance on this path is a gift, note that it is not, as in the case of Advaita, it is not that you acquire it out of your power and your will and your effort. It is a gift. Nonetheless, pious works enhance progress on this path. True knowledge is not a kind of unconscious merging into one big abyss, as Advaitins claim, but rather a concerted focusing of the mind on the Lord. Remembrance. Now, this remembrance is very, very significant. He quotes Yajnavalkya's discussions with Maitreyi, wherein he says, Atmavare Drashtavya. And he says what this immediacy, how this remembrance can be brought as immediacy. Remembrance apparently of the Lord's past appearances in one's life takes on an intense immediacy. Holding steady in this remembrance is what is designed by the word devotion or upasana. Devotion thus retains its older meaning, which is participation. This religious extension of Visistadvaita, I conclude, provided an edge for the school over Advaita, which remained more or less a scholarly concern, having little to do with the lived world of the common people. This double-edged nature of the Visistadvaita system as a thought and as a way of praxis permitted it to score better, encouraging greater participation of both laymen and scholars to it. This improvisation is effected not only in the praxis oriented of orientation of the school. Don't mistake that it is just limited to the praxis orientation. It's visible in all sub-themes that I have addressed, the 7 sub-themes. I have highlighted then and there few more. While the Advaitin chooses to set aside the worries about the world, he sets aside the world and calls upon the practitioner to focus on the self, and the self. That is what Advaitins would say. The latter compensates this lack by conceiving a real world. Again, that is how Vishishadvaitins compensate for the lack that Advaita has, the void that Advaita has created. Again, while the Advaitin proposes a twin theory of knowledge, one for the empirical world and the other for the transcendental unity, Vishishtadvaita brings back knowledge to the mundane world by insisting that there cannot be a knowledge which does not have an object at the other end. So there is no two types of knowledge. It's the expansion of the knowledge that takes you to the absolute. Similarly, Advaita proposes a theory of consciousness which is non-intentional, something which is very hard to chew. Again, I am reminded of Parimal Patilji. He was asking Professor Mishra, do you really think that there is something called Shuddha Chaitanya? So Shuddha Chaitanya is something very hard for, somebody who is not obsessed with Advaitic presuppositions to chew. While Vishishadvaitin underscores the intentionality of consciousness. So what I propose by this detailed analysis is that Advaita and Vishishtadvaita should not be seen as two positions pitched against each other, but rather one is an improvisation on the other. One seems to fill the gap which the other has created. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm done.
Yeah, we'll wait for TKP Swamin.
Hello.
Yep.
Yes, I'm
Thank you
Sreedevan.
very much for this
Yeah.
wonderful lecture, madam. It was
I
really
got
enchanting. And most of the points we don't know actually. From the Vishishtadvaita perspective, we are very happy. Now I request Mr. T. Venkatesan to propose a vote of thanks. Before that, I want to tell you a good news that tomorrow we have 2-day seminar in Madras University, the completion of 40th year of our department. Completing 40 years of Vaishnavism department in Tamil Nadu is, it's a very big challenge. It has survived. So please attend, whoever possible, please attend. Now, Venkatesan, please.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Am I audible, please? Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Dear friends, today Professor Sreekala Nair gave a wonderful lecture on the subject Advaita and Visistadvaita. Are they complementary or contradictory? We know very well this subject is a point of debate for centuries. Many people were debating on this, but the good thing on the debate is that it is opening up new avenues of research, opinions, and so many things coming up. So let it continue. That is my wish. Regarding this today's lecture, I want to thank ma'am for the excellent lecture on the subject. It really served dual purpose because most of the people who are attending today are or were students of Vaishnavism and have exposure to these kind of schools of thought. And it served the purpose of updating and also upgrading our knowledge on the subject especially. So regarding madam's touching points on particularly consciousness, knowledge, Dharma Bodha Jnana, Atman, Panchikarana, liberation, that is Mukti, especially by Sri Vedanta Desika, and points on uniqueness of Advaita and Visistadvaita Siddhartha. It was a fantastic analysis of two great philosophies and schools of thought. And of course, Madam finally gave a verdict that, as you know, it was a good one. And so, on behalf of the Vaishnavism Alumni Association, I thank you so much, Madam, for having spared your time and came and gave a very good lecture. As for attendees of today, though the timings are somewhat odd, usually we will have at 6 o'clock. Today it is 8:30. Anyway, many people turned up and I thank them for sparing time and coming for this lecture. Last but not least, I want to thank our office bearers of our association who have made arrangements for this. And with this, I hope we can conclude this. Parsadi sir, please.
Thank you
Madam.
very much. Thank you.
Thank you very
Parsadi sir,
much.
thank you. Hope I did not take much time.
Madam,
Now,
I'm
Swami
No, madam.
Hariprasad has come.
No.
I want to make a comment. Can I?
Yeah, please
Hello?
go
I
ahead.
request Hariprasad ji to say a few words.
Hello? Can I
Swami
make a
has come.
comment? Hello?
Yeah,
Can I
please
comment,
go
madam?
ahead.
Yes.
I'm Sridharan. Our lecture was very interesting. What he said is the Vaishnavism is the improvisation of the Advaita. But what I find for the common people to reach attain Mukti, surrender, Sharanagati is a more important one. For which Bhakti should have. If you look at it, Krishna Avadara, all Gopikas are not illiterate. But because of the Bhakti and surrender, they attain moksha. That's what I want to tell upon that. Again, thank you very much.
Now I request Swamiji to say a few words.
Oh, Swamiji is here.
Yes, come.
Pranam Swamiji. Where is he? I can't see him.
Sir, unmute, sir. Swamiji, unmute, please.
I'm a little late because I had concluded on Sasangam and very happy to be there. And Sreekala is one of the few Advaitans who are very comfortable with Vishnadvaita also. So, and both have this same emphasis on Sharanagati and Bhakti. So, even Acharya Shankara says that Bhakti Reva Moksha Eva Samakayam, Bhakti Reva Gadiyat. So Bhakti is the highest and the best way to reach Bhagavan. And he says that it is not incompatible with any form of self-inquiry and contemplation. So I wish I had come earlier, and I hope that Dr. Balsati will ensure that this is available on the YouTube also. Thank you.
Thank you,
I feel I
Swamiji.
missed it.
Thank you very much. And one word about Swamiji is the Mr. Haripatha Swamigal of Advaitam Peedam. It is Sree Vishnumohan Foundation. Even though it is Advaitic Peedam, he is bridging Advaitam and Visistadvaitam. And he is more a Visistadvaitin than Advaitin, I should say now. Thank you very much, sir.
Can I ask a doubt, sir, to the madam?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Madam, you are a highly learned person. As a Visistadvaita, our Acharyas say, Ramanuja lays stress on the entire Veda as a holistic approach, while Advaitins depend only on Veda Shruti, and Dvaitins lay stress on Abheda Shruti, whereas Ramanuja gives importance to entire Vedic literature and called what is called Kataka Shruti. Can you just, what is your comment? I'm still a learner of Vedantic studies.
Oh, all of us are learners, sir. My comment is, I did make a comment, quick comment though, during the talk itself. Like, we know that Ramanuja's, he's Ubhay Vedantam, wherein, and this is his unique contribution. That is how actually I started the lecture. So that is why I, want to see these two systems as one single whole. Shankara was not wrong by insisting on the Shruti literature primarily. If you watch him closely, he barely quotes Bhagavad Gita and all. Smriti is not his choice. Invariably, to establish his arguments, he quotes Shruti. And he was not wrong. But at the same time, if you come to Ramanuja, that is how the interpretative tradition moves ahead. Now Ramanuja is equally right when he that was what the time demanded, wherein he brought in the Sree Vaishnavism, the Agama into account, and then made a fine combination of both these and opened avenues for praxis, as somebody was making a mention earlier, that and at the same time not eroding the significance of the jnana. The jnana that Shankara spoke is already placed in bhakti. Bhakti is not sheer emotion, as I have already said. So, Ramanuja's subscription to the other literature, the entire literature. In fact, Dvaitins, they resort to the Smriti literature hugely. But Ramanuja also subscribed to the Smriti literature and also the Tamil Nalayara Divya Prabandha. So this has what is called, it is justified for the time and for the place, and the very fact that it is sustained centuries after centuries itself is a proof that he was right. Otherwise, it would have died out. So Shankara was right, and Ramanuja was equally right. I will not say more right, equally right. So these two tall figures have brought in fresh avenues, fresh leases of thought from Vedanta, which continues as two streams enriching each other and together enriching this land called Dakshinavata. So thank you very much for that comment.
Thank you, madam.
Thanks, one and all. Sir, can we officially end the meeting?
Thank you. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. I really enjoyed.
Thank you very much, madam. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And the video will be uploaded probably by tomorrow morning. Yeah.
Oh,
Thank
sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.